It's finally Friday.
It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by Woodbine. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. So glad you could join us. Coming up, we'll be talking about drug testing in horse racing. But first, boy, time flies, doesn't it? Mar and Saratoga, their summer meets are already over. We're just a few days away, really, from fall beginning, and that's going to get us talking about the Breeders' Cup. But before we go forward, how about let's look back. Ray, just give me a couple of moments that stand out to you from Mar and Saratoga.
I know Arrogate's Traverse was a smashing performance, but for me, Saratoga was about Songbird going east, proving that she is the champion that she showed us last year. She missed the Kentucky Oaks this year, but when she won the Alabama the way she did, that was it for me at Saratoga. And as far as Del Mar is concerned, California Chrome's wins in the San Diego handicap, beating Dortmund in a really tough battle, and then coming back and annihilating both Dortmund and Beholder in probably the greatest Pacific Classic ever. That was great. That was just terrific.
Yeah, I can't argue with either of those. In fact, those would be my choices as well. But now it sets us up to talk a little bit about the Horse of the Year, the Breeders' Cup is going to be obviously an important part of that. As it stands now, you would have to say California Chrome is the front runner, and he controls his own destiny, if you will. But then if he were to lose in the Breeders' Cup Classic, let's say that happened, it might open the door. I mean, you got to look at somebody like Songbird, who, if she won the distaff and stayed undefeated, she'd certainly have to be in the conversation. And then Tepin, who, if she wins the Woodbine Mile this month and then wins the Breeders' Cup Mile again and beats males 3 times this year, it would be hard not to give her the vote. Lots to look forward to in the next few weeks as we get ready for Breeders' Cup time. Right now, let's move on and talk about out-of-competition testing. So this week we published a story by our own Natalie Voss about out-of-competition testing and how a decade ago it seemed to be a priority for the horse racing industry. A decade later, maybe not so much. So Ray, why do you think out-of-competition testing has not taken hold the way it has in other sports?
I think the obvious answer is horse racing doesn't have the structure to enact change very quickly and very effectively. You have all these different state regulatory bodies instead of a national governing body. But having said that, remember how much fun it was to watch Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds in the home run races every year, where they're breaking records left and right?
Yeah.
We didn't want to hear about steroids. We didn't want to hear about any of that bad stuff. We just wanted to see him hit home runs. And I think unfortunately there's some of that in horse racing.
I think you're probably on point there in that, regulators, they might seem like they want to clean up the sport, but then the repercussions of catching someone, let's say a high-profile trainer who's doing something nefarious, that's not a good look for the sport either. And then that person is out of the sport for a period of time, and his or her horses might not be running. So, it's kind of a catch-22. At the same time, it's imperative that we do all we can in terms of catching people who are using and abusing substances on horses, because they're animals and they don't have any choice about what's going on. They need protection, and that's why out-of-competition testing should be absolutely essential and the top priority in horse racing, even against compared to other sports.
So I can't add anything to that. I mean, what you've captured perfectly.
And I know Natalie's story points out that there are financial issues in some states, but it may be possible to redirect funding toward out-of-competition testing versus, let's say, post-race testing. Because let's face it, the trainers who are cheating, they know how it works. They know how it works. They're not going to let themselves get caught race time. But if they didn't know that the test was coming, that might be a different situation. And we know that there are things going on, abuse of clenbuterol for trainers, and that's why New Mexico has stepped up its efforts on that front. You can talk a little bit about that. That's something that maybe the thoroughbred industry nationwide should be looking at.
Yeah, clenbuterol, when it was approved by the FDA, it was considered a fantastic drug for treating bronchial issues, breathing problems in horses. horsemen quickly learned how they could use it for abusing horses, they could abuse the drug to help horses build muscle mass, and it's become basically the drug of choice to cheat with. In training, you have to cut it off 14 days, but trainers have figured out how to get around it. They've got illicit clenbuterols they're using that are imported from other countries. And it's the kind of drug that New Mexico said, we're not going to allow it at all. And in fact, if they're doing out of competition testing, I congratulate New Mexico for that. Recently, they suspended, I think, 4 or 5 horses for 60 days, put them on the stewards list as a result of testing positive. So not only are the trainers in trouble, the horses are not allowed to run, and that hurts the owners, who then might think twice about giving horses to trainers who cheat.
Good point. All right, what do you think? Why do you think out-of-competition testing has not taken hold in racing as it has in other sports? Take the poll on our website, PaulickReport.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.